Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast Series. This episode is titled Summer Nearshore Trolling, Mahi, Kings, and More. And I'm going to be talking with Captain Rod Bierstedt of Onmyway Charters. He operates out of the Carolina Beach, Wrightsville Beach area, and we're going to be talking about planning your trip, seeking bait pods, getting some baits deep, and setting up an effective trolling spread. I'm your host, Gary Hurley of Fisherman's Post. Fisherman's Post has been serving the saltwater fishing community of North Carolina since 2003. We've been bringing you fishing reports, fishing information, fishing tournaments, fishing schools, and membership content. And now in our latest chapter, the Saltwater Podcast Series, where we reach out to our captain and guide friends from up and down the North Carolina coast and ask them to share with us their insights, their knowledge on how to catch more fish more often. In tonight's podcast, I'm joined by my co-host, David Hardin of Hardin Creative Media. Hey, David.
Gary, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man.
We're going offshore today.
We're going offshore today?
We're going offshore. It's good. It's a good day for it.
We are going. Well, we're going nearshore, offshore. I would say.
Okay.
And I would say, per our guest, Rod Bierstedt, I'm going to say that's like 10 to 35 miles. Like not right off the beach. Not that what we're doing we can't, but I would guess, and I'll get him to clarify, but I'm going to guess 10 to 35 miles off is the general area that Rod will be talking about.
All right. That sounds good. And
Rod is a longtime friend of the show, David. You're in, man. This guy loves to teach. He loves to share. He doesn't withhold anything. I don't believe, man. He is happy to put people on fish.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. You know what else I'm looking forward to? Talking about sponsors.
Me too.
Port City Signs and Graphics it was one of our new sponsors, and they do a lot of good work. Seen around town, around the area, outside of the area. And I've got just a quick exercise for you, Gary.
Ooh, I like it.
Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to look at two signs, and you're going to tell me by just looking at the sign which one is made by Port City Signs and Graphics.
All right. Two signs. One of them is made by Port City Signs and Graphics. The other one isn't. I'm up for the challenge.
Right. Okay. So here's our first sign.
All right.
This sign,
yes,
says laughter is the best medicine unless you have diarrhea.
All right. I'm not going to make a decision yet. I would like to see sign number two.
Okay, sign number two. Let's go to sign number two. Sign number two is a sort of a custom cut aluminum brushed for wave transit here in Wilmington on a nice brick wall.
Well, knowing Sabrina Davis as I do, longtime friend Sabrina as well, and knowing how professional her and her staff are, I am going to choose this aluminum polished sign mounted on a brick wall for wave transit. How'd I do?
You did excellent. You got 100% on that one.
All right. 1-0. I am doing great.
That's true. You're doing great. Our other sponsor, Marine Warehouse Center.
Oh.
A longtime sponsor.
Let's bring them up.
Matt with Marine Warehouse, excited to give you guys a huge update. We're now carrying Seabourn and Spider boat line. Of course, we have the newest models of Carolina Skiff, Sailfish, Sea Chaser, and Pan Marine. With over 60 boats in stock at a Wilmington location, let's schedule a sea trial and let's get you on the water today.
Love those guys. I can't tell you. Right now, I mean, Marine Warehouse Center has literally kept me on the water this spring, early summer, man. They are just taking care of me. A leak that could have put the fish post boat in jeopardy. They troubleshot it. They took it to the ramp, put it in the water just to make sure they took care of it. I mean, I've got nothing but good things to say about Marine Warehouse Center.
And you're back in business.
I've been back in business, yes.
That's good. That's good. Good folks.
If I have anything to complain about when it comes to Marine Warehouse Center, though, it is Terrell. That guy,
poor Terrell.
I mourn the day that guy got my cell phone number somehow. I'm pretty sure Emmett gave it to him. I'm pretty sure I should, have issue with Emmett. But Terrell keeps calling me, hey, I got a new joke for you, man. This one's going to be the best one yet.
Well, let's hear it.
All right. Again, this is Terrell's joke, not mine. Terrell says, hey, I have a fear of elevators, but I'm taking steps to avoid it.
Good. We do need like a guy just to do a rim shot in the background for these jokes.
That sounds like the producer button pusher's job.
That's right. Well, we can add it in later.
I have no buttons over here to press to come up with a.
All right. We may add that.
But the guy sitting in front of the computer
added value
has much greater chance.
Yes.
Of pressing that button.
Yes, that'll be good.
Well, I tell you what, man. If you guys would like to sponsor the show, we'd love to have you. We'd love to bring you into the family of Port City Signs Marine Warehouse Center. And as David tells you, I'm taking over right now. As David tells you, all you got to do is reach out to Fisherman's Post. Give us a call, give us an email, go to the website, and we'd love to bring you into the Fisherman's Post family, the podcast family. And then also on the website, we have membership benefits. So if you like the podcast, you want to support the podcast, then we have a membership where you can get early access to the podcast 1 week before the public release. And we also release 1 week earlier some bonus content. It's a continuation of the discussion after the public version. It's about 15 minutes of additional content, and members get that. And even more so, that same membership gets you our weekly inshore, nearshore fishing reports delivered by about 11 captains up and down the entire North Carolina coast. So one membership gets you all that, the podcast benefits and the weekly fishing reports benefits. But I talk a lot.
So many things. So many things.
David, before I bring on the guest, as I do, I'm going to remind you that we're coming back to you for David's best takeaway. Again, that's David's best takeaway at the end of my conversation with Rod. And I want you to have a good question, not a dumb question.
I've got one about squid. I want to ask about squid.
I hope you do.
Maybe I will. I don't know.
Hope you do.
We'll have to wait and see.
Well, right now it is my pleasure to welcome back to the podcast. Again, as I've said, longtime friend of Fisherman's Post, one of the all-stars of our annual fishing school, and a frequent guest on the podcast, Captain Rod Bierstedt, Onmyway Charters. So happy to be talking to you yet again.
Right here, Gary. There we are, Fisherman's Post.
Man, you look good. I tell you what, I'm gonna call inventory and tell them to expect a bump in shirt sales because Rod just donned it during our latest podcast.
There you go. Great shirt. Love it. I appreciate it. Thank you, buddy.
Well, Rod, as a previous guest on the podcast, you know the setup. I ask you two questions. You tell me you're ready for question number one. We begin.
I am ready for question number one, Gary.
Question number one, why should David, why should anyone either signed up for early podcast released or public podcast listen to you talk about nearshore trolling?
Because you want to increase whether your knowledge to be able, going out on the water is fantastic and you have a great time and it's better than a day at the office. But I always say you want to frost the cake, and frosting the cake is catching fish. And offshore fishing can be a little bit challenging at times. So what I try to do is pass along some things that can help the new person to the coastal area, which we have lots of them coming in all the time. And even the seasoned angler that just wants to up their game and get better at catching fish, target little different fish, and those kind of things. And I share helpful hints, things that have worked for me over my 42 years here, fishing here, and that were taught to me when I first moved here. And a lot of these same things I use today. Try to keep it simple. And fishing is a contact sport, Gary. If you're not where the fish are and make contact with them, you're not going to catch them. And that's what I try to promote in my podcast is you got to go where the fish are. All the stuff in the world won't work if you're not where the fish are. Okay, buddy?
I like that answer. Look at you all-star son of a, you got frosting the cake out already. You got contact sport out already. I knew you'd be ready for this podcast and you didn't disappoint. All right. Now, question number two. Okay. In our setup before we went on air, I told you, hey, I'm not going to clown you about your age like I think I've done with every podcast you've ever done with us. In fact, I want to go in a different direction. I want people to know just how hip you are, just how current and hip Rod Bierstedt is, the exact opposite of old. So I have a couple of quick trivia questions. Now, these are going to be rapid fire. You don't have much time to answer. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What is the most current iPhone out? What number?
5.
No, 15. What is the what is the shoe line called created by Kanye West?
I don't have the foggiest clue.
Yeezy. Come on now, you're hip. Remember that. Name the song by Taylor Swift that ranked #1 in 2024.
Have no idea.
Fortnite. All right, finish strong. What video game has sold more copies than any other video game of all time?
Pac-Man.
See, I don't have to joke you about being old. You just show. You just do it. You just help me out. It's Minecraft. All right, you hip, cool, not old guest of mine tonight. Let's go to the podcast. Let's give these guys the content that I know you're eager to share. I mean, and I mean that. There's no joke about that. All right, so you've done this. I've heard you talk about this before in different contexts. I mean, you got to make a plan. So before we're even on the boat, before we're headed out, talk to me about planning a trip.
That is critical, Gary. I'm big on trip planning. I always have been. I think a few hours the day before, getting on the computer. Number one is just seeing, John, even think about going offshore, understanding the waves, the heights, what's good, what's bad, the wind direction, those kind of things. Those are all things that I have to take into consideration all the time. But beyond that, the next thing is that I've been told that 100% of the fish in the ocean are in less than 2% of the ocean. And that 2% of prime water where they like to be is moving all the time. I think the ocean is the Mississippi River with no banks, and the prime water just moves wherever it wants to go. So trip planning, I like to reduce the ocean down into an area where the fish are most likely to be. Now, if you're happy with leaving the inlet, running out, putting lines in, and just hoping to get lucky, and that makes you happy and you enjoy that, keep doing it. Don't do anything else and be happy. That doesn't make me happy. I like to hear reels scream, rods bend, and I like to hear the slapping of the fish in the cooler. So I do some trip planning to position myself to get into the area where most likely the fish are going to be on that particular day and time. And one day it could be to the north. Next day it could be to the south towards Frying Pan Shoals out of Carolina Beach Inlet. It can vary each day. So that's why you trip plan. And you look for, obviously, you got to understand the fish. That's number one. What temperature range do certain fish prefer? And a lot of them overlap tremendously. So once you get into a certain range of temperatures, you're liable to catch a variety of fish. Other ones like what I call blue-green water. That's our king mackerel in particular. They love blue-green water. They're also in blue water, but they really like blue-green. Mahi, on the other side of the coin, they really like blue water. They like lower chlorophyll, higher salinity, more clear blue water. But you can also find them in clear blue-green water. But that's sort of the difference. And so you look for chlorophyll edges, which a lot of times will correspond to a temperature break. Salinity content, high salinity, low chlorophyll means real blue, clear water. Higher chlorophyll, lower salinity, you get cloudier water. And that's the things you trip plan for, and understand what each fish, what they really prefer. Okay?
Yeah, man, I follow that. And everything you say makes sense. I guess the question, you're probably weren't going to go there if you didn't check in with me. So the recreational angler that doesn't have his finger on the pulse like you do, and there's any number of services out there that are happy to take your money, and some, can help, or some overlap. So, what do you have for a guy that, wants to give himself the best chance, but is also, I don't know whether I ask is on a budget or is on a time budget. What are some of the services you recommend for people to know or gather this information you think will help them target their trip?
Well, obviously, I go with the Saltwater Central. Captain Dave Tilley has a great site, a ton of information over and above that's actually free. But then beyond that, there are two things you can subscribe to. Number one is Reefcast, and that gives you the wind, the wave height, the seas, all that information to say, should I even venture offshore? So I think Reefcast at about under $40 a year is one of the best bangs for the buck going. And it's far more accurate than some of the other ones that I see out there. And I have 3 of them that I utilize, but Reefcast is my go-to one. And I like to do it on my computer because it gives you so much information, it's hard to see it on an iPhone. The other one that he has is Seacast. And Seacast has multiple satellites that come over daily, and it gives you the water temperature, the chlorophyll, shows you chlorophyll fronts, salinity, and all the factors that I just talked about. And that, again, it's under $150 a year. And, running out blind is what I call blind, and just hoping you go to the right area. For instance, I was fishing the other day and did really good. Got into a lot of nearshore Mahi, king mackerel, and had a great trip. I had somebody that was communicating with me earlier, and he was about 10 miles north of me. And he called me and said, Rod, I just had a terrible day. How'd you do? And I said, well, we had a fantastic day. I said, we, caught a lot of fish, had a great time. And he goes, where were you at? And I said, no, pretty much, where were you at? And he told me, and I said, well, why did you go there? Well, it's a spot on the chart. And I said, well, you were about 10 miles north of where you should have been. I said, I did all my research, pulled up my intel. I found a pocket of what I thought was pretty desirable water. It looked like it was going to stay in that area due to the currents. We ran out, we found it, and we caught fish. He was literally 10 miles away from me. Same distance offshore, just 10 miles north. He was in not really desirable water. I think he caught 1 fish all day. So that's why you trip plan. But those are the services that you can get. There's Rip Charts is another one, but I like Dave Tilley's Seacast. But Rip Charts is good on your iPhone if you want it. It's about the same price. And there's a couple other ones that, if you like them, use them. Get the information. If you like the format, I just happen to like Dave's formats at Saltwater Central for his 2 items that he has.
All right, man. I follow that answer. And so I guess where I'm going to, direct the conversation now is saying, all right, in the setup, we said, summertime nearshore trolling, Mahi, kings, and more. So the 2 fish we name are Mahi and kings. Not that there aren't more out there, but those are the 2 we do by name. This podcast is going to be released, to the public July 2nd, 1 week earlier, but to the public July 2nd. So I guess if we're focusing in on kings and Mahi and people love information, what is the water temperature overlay that you're looking to make both Mahi and kings possible? Like, what are you looking for? And then, I guess have me out on the boat, because what you see on the computer, might change once you're underway, as you've told me. You also want to watch on the way out and pay attention.
Exactly. Very true. Because like we said, when we first started, Gary, I think of the ocean like a river with no banks, and the water can meander. And, it's what I do. So I've been tracking water temperatures this week. We've had a real strong east wind. This week we're recording, and it's actually pushed some really hot water near shore, or closer, not near shore, but out to about 40, 45 miles. And there's a really hot edge out there actually today. I was looking at it today. And there's another edge down south that's dipped way in. An eddy has spun in off the Gulf Stream, brought in some 82-degree water. That's really on the high side for kings. They prefer something a little lower. And if people want this information, they can request all my note files. I have it available for them. But the king mackerel ranges that we see, and this is one of my note files here. The king mackerel ranges that we see, and you can really probably can't see it, so I'll just read it. Is 66 to 76 is the ideal thing, but ideally they want that blue-green water, and we're well up into that 76-degree range. We're actually up in the high range, 77 to 85 now, and but Mahi go from 71 to 80. That's their best range, and we're right in that right now, out in that 20 to 40 mile range, and the high range is 81 to 84 for Mahi. Obviously, we've got sailfish out there. A week and a half ago, caught some nice sailfish out 40 miles off. Got into some real pretty blue water, and there were some sailfish in there that came in from the Gulf Stream on an eddy that came in and brought in the warm water. You can catch, obviously, blackfin tuna can come in there at certain times. You don't count on them. It's just a nice surprise when it happens. False albacore, they're not really good to eat. They're fun to catch, and they make great strip baits, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Obviously, amberjack and barracuda. Barracuda and amberjack are really thick out there right now. So, you'll end up catching some of those, but they're actually amberjack and barracuda in our area are both very good to eat. But a lot of people don't think about it and don't like them or don't try it. But they are very good to eat. They make great table fare.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for giving me material to joke you at in the future about eating amberjack and barracuda.
I eat them all the time.
I believe it, actually. I mean, I'm not questioning that, but that'll be part of my material. All right. So again, to go back. All right. So the guy's on the computer and he has that target area and he's headed out and he believes he's going to find this somewhere in the vicinity of 40 miles. And, you want to have a plan. You're telling us to have a plan. So that guy's driving out on the boat and he has the intention of going there. What should he be watching for that would be enough for him to change plans on the fly?
One other quick thing, Gary.
Sure.
I sort of missed it on trip planning, and I apologize, is the Maps Unique chart. This is a blow-up version of it. And if you do not, you need this chart, hard chart for trip planning. As you can see, I have it here. And what I've done is I've put little sticky dots on certain areas that where edges and temperature breaks and chlorophyll fronts have established themselves for future reference. If I was going out tomorrow, and I can remove these and move them as the water changes all the time. But the Maps Unique chart is a must-have for trip planning and really for your arsenal. It gives you so much live bottom and rocky bottom, live bottom edges. People ask me about AR reefs. I don't really fish AR reefs. They attract a lot of what I call critters and big sharks, barracuda, and stuff like that. And I fish the live bottom and the ledges and those kind of natural structure that we have off our coast. So Maps Unique chart is critical tool in your toolbox for trip planning to go along with the other systems and apps that I talked about.
All right. Fan of Chip Berry's, a fan of the product myself. Yeah. And again, I'm just directing the conversation. I know you're going to go to it. So we've got our spot. We're headed out there. Like, what's going to make me change my plan when I'm out there, or the angler changes plan? What is he or she looking for? And what does it need to be enough to see to say, hey, I think maybe we should stop here?
That is a great question, Gary. In fact, it's a super question. And I always tell people, and you hit it dead on the head, be observant running out. Watch your temperature gauge. Watch your depth finder. Have your depth finder set up so that when you're running, you're getting a good view of the bottom. And the other one is look for bait. Look for surface bait. Look for color change in the water. I always glance back. I see the color change a little better in my prop wash, and as it gets clearer and nicer looking, and then I'm still watching my temperature gauge at the same time. And subtle temperature changes of a half a degree are really, in the summertime, all you really need. And then just slow down and look at the water clarity. Just bring the boat to neutral for a minute or half a minute. Look down and look at your water clarity. And you could have passed over the edge. Then circle back, and then obviously on your GPS, pull up what structure do you have nearby. And that's why I tell people you can't have too many GPS coordinates on your machine. You just can't. I have 7,000 on my machine. It's maxed out. I can't put any more on it. And that's for Onslow Bay alone. I've got another machine with another SD card that is for Long Bay, and I have over 5,000 down there. So I've got little rocks, live bottom areas. So if you're running out and you see those and you see these visual factors, it looks like it's raining off in the distance. You can see the water moving a little bit, looks like it's raining. Well, that's a pod of bait. And pods of bait, one, like to stay on structure. Number two, they like to stay down deep. They only come to the surface when they have been driven to the surface by fish, by predators. Their sanctuary and where they feel safe is down deep. They don't feel safe when they're exposed up on the surface. So it's worthwhile to run it, obviously, to fish around those pods of bait. You might be 10 miles from your desired location. And if I see a lot of bait pods on the surface, I'm putting my spread out and I'm going to troll around them. I'm going to pull up my GPS, see what structure I have nearby, what ledges, lie bottom, and work that area, because that bait is on the surface for a reason. The other telltale factor is you're riding along and it smells like your local fish house, and you smell fish. Well, it is fish. It's fish oil from bait fish that have been killed, and the oil floats to the top. Sometimes it'll leave a nice sheen area up on the surface of the water, like somebody dumped a quart of motor oil in there. It's oil, but it's fish oil from predators feeding on bait fish, and that oil floating to the surface. One, you can smell it, and two, a lot of times you can see it. So that's when you would cut your desired location, look at your instruments, your temperature, look at the water, the clarity, because that water can move overnight, miles overnight, easily. So the water you were going to might have moved inshore with a good east wind and a current coming in a little bit, could have pushed it inshore through 4 or 5 miles, 7 miles overnight. Okay.
Yeah, man, I follow that. It's great. I love hearing it again and hearing it from different captains, but I know it's been one of your mantras, since I've known you, about being observant and be prepared to change plans, but have a plan. I mean, I like everything about that. I think it applies to actually so much in life. And I know that any topic or any question on fishing I give you, you could speak at length on. But since we have some time constraints on this podcast, I'm going to push you to all right, so now we're in a spot where we have some confidence, whether it's our pre-plan or our on the fly, observation spot. And in your show notes or in our talking points, it was like you want to set out an effective trolling sped. And part of that is getting a bait or getting some baits deep. So we're off plane, we're now at our location. What happens on Rod Bierstedt's boat?
Well, that is very good, Gary. Especially in the summer months that we're in now, with water temperatures high, the sun angle high, the fish, if you are pulling all of your spread up on top, you're missing a high percentage of the fish, because they might be on the surface for the first couple hours after daylight. By 8, 9 o'clock, they're going down. And one, that's where the bait is, because the bait is down deep, as we talked about earlier. So you need to get I like to have, if I'm running 6 lines, I want at least 2 baits down deep in the water column. if I'm in, let's say 90 or 100 feet of water, I want one bait down around 50 feet deep and another bait in the 25 to 30 foot range. There's a couple ways. Now we're talking about fast trolling here, not high speed trolling, fast trolling. Fast trolling is from 6.5 to 8 miles an hour. I'm going to say miles per hour. Now, I normally talk in knots, but I'll say miles per hour for this podcast. So you want a minimum of 6.5 miles an hour and all the way up to 8.5 miles an hour. And a couple things that I like to use is I like to use planers. And been around, this was taught to me when I moved here 40 plus years ago. On a rod planer, this is the number 2 planer, 40-pound test line on your rod, a 5.5 foot rod, 30 to 50 pound class. All you need, you don't need anything gigantic or big and heavy. And what do I put on the back of this to get down deep? Day in and day out, blue water candy, sea witch, double hook rig, and a belly strip, false albacore belly strip. Gets down deep. It was taught to me 40 years ago. It's still utilized. Hook this. I've got 50 feet of 80 to 100 pound mono leader. No need for fluorocarbon. And hook it on the back of the planer, shoot it down deep, and it is a catch-all. You can catch kings, mahi, sailfish, amberjacks, barracuda, false albacore, anything that's down there. That is a go-to catch-all type thing getting deep. You don't want to do that. Another good way to go deep are deep diving plugs. You get the right kind, the right brands, and this happens to be a Rapala. And this will run down up to 40 feet deep. Simple, easy. You don't have to worry about a belly strip, and it gets down deep. It's got a rattling system in it, so it makes noise and vibrates, looks very lifelike. This is the biggest one. This one you want probably 40, 50 pound test line on it. They make obviously smaller ones, a little bit smaller. Another really good one that works excellent. And even a little smaller is good. This one actually has some teeth marks on it because I was pulling this on the last trip and it got chewed up by some king mackerel. But deep diving plugs are another good way to get down deep. There's a couple other options that if people want to PM or send me an email, reach out to me. I'll share it with you on my notes because we just can't talk about it all. But there's a couple other ways that the recreational angler can get deep. But those are two of my favorite ways to get some baits deep. And you need at least 2 baits. If you're only running 4 poles, 2 deep, 2 on top. Okay?
All right. If you said it, I missed it. If I go back to planers, what number planer at 6.5 to 8 will get me 25? What number planer at 6.5 to 8 miles per hour will get me 50?
Okay. And both of them will, Gary. It's all about geometry. Okay. The further you let a number 2 planer back, this happens to be a number 2. This would be the smallest one I use offshore. If I let it back far enough, I can get it down 50 feet because the line angle, the further it goes back, the deeper it's going to go. A number 3 planer, which I like to pull on a 50-pound class rod with 50-pound test line. This one can go shorter back and still get down deep. So number 3 and number 2 are really all you need. And the depth, there's no way to calculate it. I just set them. And if one of them is getting hit more than the other one, then I adjust the other one to try to get them a little closer in depth. Truthfully, I have no idea how deep they're going. I'm hoping there's some more exact ways to do it with a different system, but it's all about geometry. The farther you let, like this number 3, if I let this back 100 yards, it's going to be really deep. I mean,
okay.
60, 70 feet deep. The number 2, I let it back 100 yards and set it. probably 40, 30, right, 40, 50 feet deep, but there's no way to gauge it. There's no chart I've seen or anything else.
All right, I like that answer. And now, so I know that your business model has changed. Instead of chartering, it's more apt probably to say Onmyway guide service. You have a history now of getting on other people's boats and showing them how to best fish their boats, teaching them to fish in real time on the water, and not just on your boat, but like on their boat, so that they can more easily replicate it on their own. So what have you found, like for this nearshore trolling, and you're with a wreck angler, with someone relatively new, because I'm sure other people take you out to fine tune, but if someone's relatively new, they want to enter this market, do you have them start with 4 lines? Do you have them start with 6 lines? And this question will then parlay into, all right, if we have a couple baits deep, tell me about what you're going to pull up top.
Yes. It all depends on your boat, Gary. What we're talking about today is anything from, say, 15, it could start really at 10, but 15 to 40 miles. And, 21-foot boats, I go on people's boats, 21-foot boats. They do not have outriggers. Obviously, outriggers allows you to spread lines out farther and to obviously run more lines. But the small boat guy, the 21, 23-foot center consoles, they can easily run 4 lines. Depending on wind and sea conditions is one of the big factors. 4 lines for most recreational anglers, 4 lines, what you mentioned, Gary, is really what they want. It's literally all you can handle at times. And that would be 2 top lines. And if you're using, a lot of the T-tops now have king mackerel, what we call king mackerel rod holders off the sides, and they're off at an angle. I love the ones that are 30 degrees, but a lot of them are even flatter than that. And if you put a rod up there and you are fast trolling like we're talking about, the one thing you have to do, because I don't want you to get mad at rod, is you have to secure that with a cable, with a cord that you can pull it out and then remove the cord and fight the fish. Because when you're turning, because you've got the drag set pretty, not real tight, but tighter, there is the potential that if fish hits it on a turn, you can watch your rod and reel go airborne into the ocean. And so if you're using your king mackerel rod holders, and I do it a lot on other people's boats, and when I travel to go on other people's boats, I actually have 4 safety cords with me. I make sure I have plenty. And if we're using those king mackerel rod holders, I put a safety cord on it.
I follow, man. I would imagine the answer was going to be 4. And, I imagine that, 6 does seem to be, a significant upgrade in what you have to manage successfully. It seems to me it'd be better to do 4 rods well than 6 rods okay. And then, so if we're all doing 2 rods, like, and we're keeping it simple, one of your mantras, which I also like, if we're keeping it simple, what are going to be on those 2 rods up top?
Well, obviously, a pin rig ballyhoo, and a lot of people get a little scared of pin rigging ballyhoo. A pin rig ballyhoo, you can't beat it. It's a great bait, but a very little unknown fact is the #1 natural bait in the world, and a lot of people can't answer this, is a strip bait. And so the strip bait I talked about on the planer rod, you can actually have and run off of a long rod. And this happens to be a blue water candy, this Mylar witch, and it's a double hook strip bait. Well, a lot of people say, well, where do you buy strip baits at? Well, you can't buy them. You have to make them from false albacore bellies and fillets. The one thing that I have found recently is in all of the tackle stores here locally, at least in our area, there are a product called squid strips. And that is squid wings cut into about 3/4 inch to maybe 1 inch wide strips. And if you take those and trim them so they're about a 1/4 inch thick, and taper the ends and make that strip 7 inches long, you have a fantastic trolling strip bait. And there's a whole, in 5 pounds, there are lots of them in there. Thaw them out, lay them out, trim them up. You can buy squid wings and make your strips out of that. So that is another real easy option for you to have strip baits. So you don't need to take and fillet and salt and cure and create your strip baits out of false albacores, though they are really good. But the squid strips work fantastic. But you can pull this. You can pull a pin rig ballyhoo. This is one of my favorite ones for Nearshore, and it's nothing more than a blue water candy king skirt and your regular pin rig. That's all it is. Nothing fancy. No, keep it simple and just get your small ballyhoo. You don't need mediums. Get smalls and put it on this. Fantastic bait for nearshore trolling. A couple things you'll want to do to entice either the strip bait long or the ballyhoo is I like to add in front of it some hoochie squids. And this is the same rig, a little different color on this, on the pin rig, but then I've created a little hoochie squid teaser in front of it. And I space those about 18 inches apart. And what that does, it just creates a little more commotion. So literally, if you had 2 top lines, instead of having 2 baits back there, be it a strip bait or be it a pin rig ballyhoo, and you add a hoochie squid strip in front of it of, say, 4 hoochie squids, all of a sudden I've got 10 baits behind my boat, creating a little illusion of a mini bait pod behind my boat. And that's what you're trying to do. And then again, if you don't even want to do that, if you want to just not mess with any kind of bait, there are a lot of artificials. This is one of my favorite for nearshore Mahi in the summer months. It's a little chugger head. Again, I have my hoochie squids, and I put a little moldcraft bird even in front of that to create a little more commotion, a little more activity behind my boat. This is a simple, easy, put it back and forget it kind of bait. Another one is the blue water candy squid right here that you can pull back there. Easy, simple, skips on top. A great summertime bait for nearshore Mahi. And there are a multitude of them, but those are a couple that are easy, simple, and they're no nonsense, don't have to worry about it kind of bait. So literally, you don't need any bait at all. You can pull a couple deep diving plugs and these last 2 that I told you about that are baitless rigs, and you've got a trolling spread.
I follow. What happens? The range that you gave me, 6.5 to 8 miles per hour. Like, right. What factor? And this is probably going to be the last question before we wrap it up. What factor would push you more to 6.5? What would push you more to 8? And I guess part of that question is spawned from you showing me bait rigs and showing me artificial rigs, wondering if bait or artificial factors into that 6.5 to 8.
Neither. No, you can pull all of them in that range. It all depends on what I like to do is I look back. And another thing about setting your top lines, every boat, and that's why it's important, why I go on other people's boats versus them coming on my boat, is every boat creates what we call clear water trolling alleys. It is imperative that your top lines be in those clear water trolling alleys. One of them is created by your motor prop wash and then the back corner of your boat. That creates the first one out the back, and you position a bait in it. Then from the corner of your back corner of your boat up to where the boat enters the water, you create another V clear water trolling alley. And if you can get a bait out into that, that's also extremely good. You want your baits positioned in these clear water trolling alleys. And the speed, it just depends. if I'm in an area that looks real fishy and I'm marking a lot of bait, I sense there's fish activity there, and I'm not getting any strikes, and I'm trolling, let's say at 6.5 miles an hour, I'll jump it up to 8. A lot of times, the faster speed will in fact entice a strike. It'll trip that fill trigger in the fish. The other one is if you're turning and your inside line gets struck on a turn, that inside line is going faster than the outside line. The outside line didn't get hit, but the inside line did. That's indicating that maybe the fish today want a little more active bait. They want something a little faster. And then you look back and you just make sure it's trolling good. And what I do, I keep it real simple. I look at it and I go, yeah, I'd eat that. I'd attack that bait. That is something I'd go after. If it is tumbling, not looking natural, then you adjust it either in length, back farther, or up closer so that it looks natural, and that's when you adjust your speed. You want your trolling spread, your top baits in particular, to look natural, to be skipping, swimming, and not tumbling, so that they look really natural. Okay, Gary?
I follow. Rod Bierstedt, I know we could talk. I know I could talk with you for hours about fishing. Again, we're at the end of our time together. One thing I want to point out, and you mentioned it while you were talking, is Rod mentioned, hey, he's got notes. He's got note sheets. He's happy to email them to you. He's happy to send them out to you. And that you heard him correctly. All you have to do is reach out to Rod. And I've seen him, Word documents, pages of material. And again, as I introduced him, and he's happy to be an ambassador. He's happy to help you catch fish. And again, if you want to take it to the next level, you can bring him on his boat, bring him on your boat and teach you, but no obligation. Reach out to him. He's happy to send you those notes. Rod, I'm going to turn it back to you for just one last final thought, to share with our audience. And then we're going to come to David and wrap this show up.
Final thought is, folks, it's hard to believe Gary's had Fisherman Post for 21 years. I've been affiliated with Gary, known Gary for every one of those years. Time has flown by. He is a great asset to our fishing community, and I support him 100%. And I'm here to help any of you. Whatever, call me or, email me at first. I'll give you my cell phone number. Call and talk to me. Let's talk fishing. I like nothing better. But Gary, you're a great ambassador to the sport and what you do for the fishing community. I applaud you. Thank you very much, and look forward to working with you for many more years, my friend.
I agree, Rod, man. Thank you for that. I'll accept a compliment. I very much appreciate that. And yeah, call Rod day or night. It doesn't matter what time. He's happy to help you out. And we're going to give you his cell number here shortly. Hey, Rod.
Okay, thanks.
Already looking forward to the next time, Rod. Thank you, man.
Okay, thank you, buddy.
All right, David Harden. I said I was coming back to you for David's best takeaway.
There's so many, as normal with this podcast, there's so many takeaways. But I think the one I'm going to go with is planning the trip. There was a site called Saltwater Central that Rod talked about. And that's a site that I've used in the past, and I found it to be very good. So I felt that he validated me a little bit with the Reefcast and the Seacast on Saltwater Central, trying to plan your trip out.
Yeah.
Not to mention that he did mention squid.
I knew.
That was another takeaway. Gary likes to make fun of me because I made some sort of squid comment that he found very humorous.
You asked the captain how much he uses squid for catching red drum, and yes, I did find some humor in that in that question coming from my Saltwater Podcast series co-host. Yes.
So trolling with squid, second takeaway.
You're right. You're bounced back, man. You're doing great. This is your guy. He uses squid. Yeah, man, it was great. It was a great show. I had no doubt bringing Rod in, and yeah, man, we're fortunate.
Great. Well, before we wrap it up, let's thank our sponsors, Port City Signs and Graphics and Marine Warehouse Center. If you'd like to sponsor the podcast, just contact Gary at the Fisherman's Post, and we'll hook you up. Yeah, and a reminder that, while this was going to release on July 2nd publicly, we also have podcast membership where you can get early access and you can get bonus content.
again, once we wrap up here, we're going to continue our conversation with Rod for another 15 minutes or so. And, we'd love to give you access to that. Go to the website and get your details.
Fisherman.